The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 2, Reading and Viewing. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to explore and explain key features of texts and how they contribute to meaning. Learners should be able to identify and explain the purpose, structure, and language use in texts.
Hi, thanks for joining me again. In the first part of this lesson, we looked at a column that was written by Charlotte Bauer that appeared in the lifestyle section of the Sunday Times newspaper. There are many columns in a newspaper. If you read the paper regularly, you will start to be familiar with some of the regular columnists. There are those who write about sport, some who write about travel, some who comment on politics, and some who discuss what's going on in the world of theatre and the arts. In this section of the lesson, we're going to look at another column. This one will use slightly different forms of attitude, tone, style, and register. The more practice that you get in analyzing and comparing texts, the better you will become at doing this yourself and being comfortable using the terminology correctly. In this part of the lesson, we're going to look at a column written by Gwen Gill that appears on a weekly basis in the Sunday Times newspaper. Gwen Gill is the social columnist for the Sunday Times newspaper. She attends events such as parties to launch new products or big fundraising events for charities, and then she describes these events in her column. Gwen Gill's column is lots of fun to read because she uses a chatty, light-hearted style. She describes the events that she attends in much the same way as you and I would if we were describing a party that we had been to a friend who wasn't there. Sometimes she's quite complimentary about the food that was served, the decor, and what people wore. But other times, she's actually quite insulting. If you read her column regularly, you will see exactly what I mean. For today's lesson, we're going to focus on one specific column that she wrote. This one is entitled, "Frail Madiba Can Still Work His Party Magic." Now that's just the headline of this column, but by analysing it closely, we can work out what this column is likely to be about. South African readers would obviously know that by Madiba, Gwen Gill means former President Nelson Mandela. However, if she had used his full name, this article would not have had the same warmth that the title Madiba brings to it. Using his honorary title Madiba also shows that Gwen Gill sees him as a special person. Clearly, she is a supporter of Nelson Mandela. She also says that he brings to a party his party magic. Here she's showing that any event is made that much more special when Madiba attends. We've looked at the heading, now let's read the first paragraph of this article. Despite looking a little sad and a tad frail, and with not a jive in sight, he added much fuzzy warmth to a Mandela Children's Fund do at the Santon Sun on Wednesday. In the title of this article, we learned that Madiba brings party magic to the event. However, in the first paragraph, we realize that he is actually getting frail. He's getting older and can no longer jive like he once did. From this, we see that Gwen Gill is further emphasizing what a special person he is. Despite getting older and more sickly, he is still able to bring this special quality to an event. From just the title and the first paragraph, we've been able to determine quite a lot about this article. So let's go through our checklist and see what we've noticed. In terms of attitude, the journalist is positive about Mandela. The tone that she uses is respectful and admiring. In terms of register, she uses the informal name Madiba and the phrase party magic, which is casual and chatty. Her style is informal and appropriate for a social column. we've already been able to determine quite a lot about the writer's opinion of the event and the person involved. Let's read a bit further to see if our predictions are true. Also, I hope you've noticed that we've been putting our definitions into good use. Let's continue. There are people who will tell you that the only must-have ingredient at a South African party is Mandela. So Gwen Gill tells you that there are people who say this, but she doesn't tell you who the people are. This is a common technique used by social columnists to give the reader the sense that they are being let in on a piece of gossip or told a secret. Sometimes they will even say things like, "I heard from a friend of a friend," or "a little bird told me," when they don't want to reveal the origin of their information. Another thing Gwen Gill does in this extract we've just read is she refers to Mandela as being an essential ingredient for planning a party. When she does this, she means no disrespect. However, this is part of her light-hearted approach. People who read her column regularly are interested in parties, throwing them and attending them, and for them it would be quite fun to know that Mandela is seen as an essential ingredient for ensuring a successful party. The article continues like this. We've already discussed how Mandela was looking a little bit frail and that he was not able to do his normal jive. Here Gwen Gill is relying on the reader to have some knowledge of what the Mandela jive is. The Mandela jive is the jaunty little dance that Mandela often performs at special occasions. He made it famous at his inauguration and has done it at many other events. Did you notice how the event was referred to as a do? This is an informal word used to describe an important event. She also uses the words tad and fuzzy. Again, these are examples of informal words. By using informal diction, she further emphasizes her chatty, informal style. Let's look at the next sentence. Children's fund functions always bring out the A-list guest crop. What can you notice about the author's style here? Why do you think she describes the guests as the A-list crop? Why doesn't she write out the name Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in full? Instead, she uses the shortened form Children's Fund. Gwen Gill uses the kind of language that people who go or who want to go to these parties might use. You might think that being called part of the A-list crop would be quite insulting, but in actual fact, many people would love to be described like this. It would indicate that they have arrived, that they are regarded as being important enough to be invited to this type of party. The fund's name is also not given in full because apart from the fact that it was already mentioned in this article, it is something that Gill assumes the readers will know what she is talking about. The techniques that we have used to analyze this text can be applied to any text or passage that you are faced with in an English test or exam. Subconsciously, start to analyze any text that you read, and soon you will be able to identify these features in any text. The features to look out for are attitude, tone, style, and register. In this series of lessons, we are going to be using these terms to evaluate a lot of texts. And now that you know how to evaluate single texts, in the next lesson, we are going to use these terms to compare different texts that have been written about the same topic. If you read a lot, you will know that some texts are written to be serious, to inform readers, whereas others are more light-hearted and are written simply to amuse or entertain. You can now put what you have learnt in this lesson into practice by analysing texts to work out what the writer's attitude is and what their purpose was in writing the text. Please join me for the rest of this series of lessons. Goodbye.